Hello again and welcome to ISAC Software Academy Linux course. This lesson will be covering desktop environments and window managers and the differences between them, how to use them, what they're like and what they're for. We have covered these briefly in the lesson for the X Windows system. However, we will be focusing exclusively on window managers and desktop environments for this lesson. Now, you've seen these previously, however I will be showing you some again, and I'll also be showing you more advanced use for these. And as you can see, I've put down a couple of dot points that a desktop environment is a collection of related software. Now, this is in contrast to a window manager, where it is designed quite simply to manage the windows. And the best way to explain this is you can have a window manager in a desktop environment. You cannot have a desktop environment in a Windows manager. It's the difference of a desktop environment has a window manager as well as many other things. And these two terms are quite often used interchangeably, but there is a vast difference. As a prime example, XFCE or Xforce is a desktop environment. However, Xforce has its own window manager named XFWM. This is probably the hardest concept to understand in this lesson, so if you've got that down pat, we'll be good as gold for the remainder. Now, to contrast the two some more, desktop environments will generally use more resources. Now, this is obviously because they will use those resources for all of the extra software that they actually contain. A window manager, on the other hand, doesn't have all of that excess, what a lot of people would call bloat, and as such runs a lot more smoothly. However, a desktop environment is designed to be more user-friendly, so that the person using the interface doesn't struggle to do basic tasks. Now, this is also bundled with a large library of software applications, as I've mentioned. This is not limited to just what you would need for a desktop environment. This can be the likes of a text editor or a burning software or anything you can really think of. Now, a window manager, on the other hand, they are designed to be lightweight. They only run windows of other applications. That's their meaning for existence. And it is usable on lower end hardware, or as I say here, greater performance in general. So if you have a high-end system and you want to get the most performance out of it as you possibly can, you're not too concerned about usability, then this is where you would use a window manager to improve that performance and make sure it's running as efficiently as it could be. Now, a window manager, as we've sort of touched on a little bit here, can actually be quite intuitive. The Xforce desktop environment has its own window manager, so there is some crossover. These are general rules and should be taken as such. Now, there are obviously many different kinds of window managers and various desktop environments. The most common on a Linux installation would be Xforce, GNOME and KDE. The window managers will generally be the ones that are the default. Now, in the case of Ubuntu, that would be a GNOME Unity desktop. So that's something to keep in mind when selecting a Linux installation as well, but it can be changed, so you're not stuck with whatever happens to be installed when you install the system. And as I've stated down the bottom there, they do use common window managers in the desktop environments. The Xforce one happens to have its own XFWM, but you don't have to use that one. It is more lightweight and it's designed to be that way, but you can use, for example, KDE instead. But then you're not using Xforce. So it's really up to you how you want to actually run your system in that regard. However, the basic rule is, if you want more performance, stick to running only a window manager. If you want a more user-friendly interface, run a desktop environment. Now this is the Unity interface that we have become quite familiar with. This is based off of the GNOME desktop environment, and this is the default for an Ubuntu desktop. Now there are many pros and cons to using Unity. It is considered to be one of the more user-friendly interfaces and a lot more accessible to new users. However, for example, should you want to go into something, rather than have a system whereby you would go into, for example, on a Windows system, you would go into the Start menu and then to a Programs and then to whatever program you actually wanted. Here, rather than go to that sort of extreme, you can simply type in what you actually want to run. So as an example, if I wanted to run the Kate manager, which is a text editor, nothing more, I can type in Kate, and as you can see, it will eventually run. And I can type away and I have my text editor there ready to go. Now you can also use shortcuts. As an example, if I wanted a terminal, I just hit Control and Alt and then hit the T key and I have a terminal. So these are advantages to this particular interface. There are, however, quite a lot of incompatibilities with this interface, and as such is something to keep in mind. Now I'll now show you the Enlightenment interface again. As you can tell, it's only a lot different from the Unity interface. You can left click like I just did and you will have access to applications, files, run everything, which I'm rather apprehensive to actually do. The desktop, you can change to a different virtual desktop, which we've covered in previous lessons. You can actually add shelves. As you can see, there's shelves. So these are all options available here. Got cleanup options and a great deal of other things here, such as settings, which if we now go into that, we can see that you have multiple options, and obviously you can resize. You can see, I can't do this with the cursor, but in the middle of this window you'll actually see that there is a pixel size, which is 612 by 431, which goes up now 655 by 455, and it will continue to change if I continue to resize it like that. Now that's actually rather handy in some applications, so it's something to keep in mind. But as you can see, there's a lot of options here that you can change and customize the look of it, and obviously the feel of it. It's pretty much what you'd find in anything else, except that this is the way they've chosen to present it. And this is actually a fairly popular interface to use. It has lost a little bit of favor towards more of a KDE popularity, which is predominantly from the fact that Linus Torvalds prefers KDE, but it's not something you really need to worry about. Now you will note, now I am presently clicking the right mouse button. This does not have a right mouse button interface like some others do. Obviously you can click on System as we did last time to log out, and I'll now show you a bit more of the Fluxbox interface. As you can see, it's exceptionally minimalistic. You have multiple workspaces that you can go through, a date and time down the bottom here, which you can customize things however you wish. There are other things over here for applications, as you would have seen in the Enlightenment interface, which as you can see here, this is using X-Force, so you've got that there. You can lock the screen, as you can in most of these interfaces. You can actually change the window manager directly here to a limited amount of options. We're not actually capable of all of the options, but still. The configuration is available here on this menu as well. The styles, so you can change this to, for example, let's go lemon space. It's now changed the color scheme, so it's a different style. You do blue night, which makes things very difficult to read on the interfaces here. Shade perhaps, and so on and so forth. The workspaces, we're not actually using anything other than number 1. However, you do have access to 4 of them, and the options for Fluxbox. There is quite a few here, so I will cover GNOME again. Now, in this instance, this will actually be the GNOME interface rather than the Unity one. However, it's very difficult to tell the difference in most instances. When the bar pops up here, as you can see, the background is identical, and there is obviously a clock up here. Now this in the Unity interface is actually over here. The activities is somewhat similar. It's have applications you can go to, and it's got a large list there, and you can type to search as well. So try our good old trusty text editor, and away you go. It's very, very similar to Unity, so you should be fairly used to it by now. And obviously this is slightly different again, but Unity is based off of GNOME, so it's bound to be very, very similar. This is one of the more common ones, which is KDE. There are many distributions that use KDE as the default desktop environment, and you can go for those. Ubuntu actually has the possibility of using Kubuntu, which is a distribution that's released with KDE specifically. I've just got an error there because I don't use this one. However, as you can see, it's very much more of a Windows feel to it, rather than what you would be used to with much of the GNOME interfaces. And apparently we've had some crashes. We have another crash here, so it's not going too well for this installation by the looks. However, this is more than likely to do with some compatibility issues between certain packages that I have installed for demonstration purposes, so this generally doesn't happen. KDE is usually quite robust. As you can see, this has a list of favorites, which you can use the file manager called Dolphin, an instant messenger that's actually called Copete. things like that. The web browser, which is Reconc, which is a re-envisioning of the Conqueror browser, which is functional but not 100% what you'd be used to with the likes of a Firefox or Chrome situation. You have instant access to your system settings and an audio player by the name of Amarok, which is quite similar to most media players that you would be used to that have library management facilities. Now you can see here also that you have somewhat standard collection of options in the applications. Now if I click into one of these, you can see we have more options in there for specific applications. We can go to specific places, such as my home directory, the network, which can be any real kind of network connection that they have a package installed for. You can install more packages as you wish. The rubbish bin, and obviously the root directory. There's also a recently used list. As you can see, I don't use the KDE interface, so I don't actually have a recently used list, but that is also available here. Now this obviously has a great deal of tools that are in fact part of the KDE installation. As an example, I believe the graphics has a K snapshot, and the K indicates KDE. You'll find a lot of applications actually have a K or a G at the start of them, indicating either KDE or GNOME. The difference between them is the libraries they use, and you can in fact run GNOME applications in KDE and KDE applications in GNOME. This is all we're going to cover in this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you.